We did
Good
say
morning.
get on with it. Hello, everybody.
Hello. Hello, are you all right?
Oh, I think so.
Good.
Sun shining.
Sky
Yes.
blue.
Yeah, I've had to close the blinds today. Too much sun. We don't want that on the screen. But there we are.
Oh.
Well, it's just three of us because the good Reverend Neary is in the Principality today.
Oh yes, she is. Yes.
She's in the Principality in Llanaf, commonly known as Cardiff to some people.
Yeah, she's.
David's on holiday.
Well, I am kind of on holiday, but I'm on call on holiday because without anybody else here, in case of a major emergency, i.e., the roof does happen to blow off one of our churches, which I've spoken about before, I'm kind of here. But
Rev chat isn't a major emergency then.
Rev chat is just a pleasure to do with you two.
Oh, okay.
But once I've completed Rev Chat, it's back out into the garden to continue my Gardener's World exploits of the last few days. It's very good.
Oh, wow.
I've got to clean all the moss off the drive today.
Oh, gosh.
And if I get time...
You really know how to enjoy yourself, David, don't you?
No, well, that's not all, Chris, because if I do that in too quick a time, then I'll be put onto the second job I've saved all week, which is a real cracker, cleaning the drains out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So
I always have that job.
Don't work too hard because you'll get another job.
Don't worry, Chris. I know my role in life.
I was thinking, I hope you don't apply that to the day job.
Well, that's taken for granted, isn't it? You know, no peace for the wicked, as my mother used to say.
Oh,
yeah, it's all good. It's all good fun. It's all good fun. And
this is the first week where we haven't got Jo at all anymore permanent.
I think she's coming next week. I think there's the big hurrah, the big fanfare next week.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, I've told her if we record on another day, she'll have to be here.
Right.
Oh, well, we could do.
And is she going to fill in for holidays and things?
Well, occasionally we do other days, you see. If a Thursday, just as you know, Deb, occasionally Thursdays haven't been for all of us a good day, so we've done another day, just Tuesday or something. We just have to pretend it's Thursday for the viewer. You see, viewer.
Yes, yeah. Okay, I'll keep.
It's a bit like recording a lot of things on television. We think they've just been done today, but they were done months ago, really.
Yeah. That's what they do with the hootenanny.
The sky is blue outside. It's actually snowing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I never knew that, Deb. You've now totally destroyed my whatever hootenanny. I shan't be able to watch it ever again.
Yeah, well, I know. Sorry about that. They don't have the party on New Year's Eve. They have it in September.
do you watch it? Have you ever been? Have you ever been a guest at hootenanny?
No. I'd love to. I do like Later. I think it's good.
It's very good.
Hootenanny is good, but most people watch that at the end when the big bells come, don't they?
They do.
Unless they're having a proper party. I mean, I don't go to many proper parties. I don't know about you two.
No. I am not invited.
What a sad lot we are.
I'm not a party animal. My days of party animaling died after I left the nursing home. I couldn't keep up with the pace. Nursing home parties,
or the pace of the residents.
No, nursing home parties were a thing to.
I bet you were there. I bet you were at the heart of it all, weren't you, David?
I was always there, being sensible, trying to keep control, because they did get out of control quite easily if you weren't careful. Yeah.
And if you want any idea as to why David's come off his holiday to record Rev Chat, that is the reason.
Yeah, he's trying to corral us, isn't he? He's trying to keep us.
No, I'd like to stir you out of control. That'd be better still.
Oh, right, okay.
I'd like to stir you. There we are. Anyway, dear viewer, all of this is very interesting, and we hope that today we're going to pass on wisdom of some sort. I'm not quite sure. Without the tutor here, the theology is not going to be as good as usual, is it?
No, it won't be. No.
There we are.
Well,
so let's have a pause, Chris.
Let's have a pause.
So as I've got Luke chapter 24 with me, do you want me to read?
Oh, Chris, how good of you.
So we're on the road to Emmaus today. Now, on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. And how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it's almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour, they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. And they were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread.
Thanks, Chris. That's a fairly straightforward story, isn't it?
Is it?
No.
It must have been. They must have been fit disciples, because the road trip they met
Yes, who got with it.
7 miles from Jerusalem, and the same day they walked all the way back again.
I've read a few things over the years about this particular story, and I think it was Jane Williams in one of her commentaries suggests that the story's about them going home. Here are all the disciples hiding away because they're absolutely frightened to death of being got at or killed or whatever. And these two men, who obviously are followers, disciples of Jesus, or they're not part of the inner group of 12, suddenly, from nowhere, they start letting this total stranger who could have done something to them know all about who they are and what they are. But they don't recognise him, do they?
See, I think that's a fascinating subject in its own right. Why didn't they recognise Jesus? Why didn't Mary, when she met him in the garden, recognise Jesus? the disciples, when he appeared in the room, why didn't they recognise him?
I think sometimes you see what you expect to see, and you don't see what you don't expect to see. And even though they were talking about Jesus all the time, they were talking about him being dead, being gone, having, left them. And that is where their mind was. And it reminds me a little bit of what we were talking about last week with Thomas as well, because Thomas was saying, if I don't put my hands on the wounds and put my hand in his side, I will not believe it. He wasn't willing to accept a secondhand version. And these disciples on the road to Emmaus were talking about, different people having seen Jesus, but they were still in the mindset that Jesus had gone. And so it's about, when they say that thing, that wonderful phrase, didn't our hearts burn within us? They weren't even recognizing what was happening within themselves because they kind of discounted it. And it was only in the breaking of the bread. There's a moment, isn't there, when suddenly they see. It's quite psychological, really. It's about humanity and who we are and what we're willing to open our eyes and our hearts to and what we're not. And, they kind of gave a catalogue of things that made, gave the story of Jesus risen, and yet they weren't.
I was going to say, because as far as we're aware, Deb, they recognised in those beautiful words, really, we say they recognised him in the breaking of the bread. They actually wouldn't have been there when he did that, of course, at the Last Supper.
No.
So in that short time, Chris, as you pointed out, and it is a comparatively short time after all this has happened, or after the crucifixion, all that's happened, the story's already got around quite a lot, hasn't it?
Mm.
Because what did they know about the breaking of the bread, other than the fact that disciples said, every time we meet together, we've got to do this, which is the significance and the importance to me of the sacrament and today, that we do it because Jesus says, every time you meet together, do this in memory of me.
Yeah. But it does say quite a lot about people, doesn't it? About what you're willing to accept and what makes you accept things. And there has to be, it's almost like this gut thing that, you could see it from afar, you could hear a secondhand version, but it's when it actually reaches your insides, your heart, that you kind of open your eyes.
No, absolutely.
And isn't that almost one of the big challenges we've got today? It's 2,000 years since these disciples on the road to Emmaus met Jesus, since Thomas met Jesus, since the disciples met Jesus. All we've got is secondhand news, the Bible, the authority of other people. We go to authentically try and read an authentic Bible. Our translators are always there trying to produce a more accurate translation of the original scripts. We're trying to understand the secondhand and experience it. And like Deb says, as the gut feel in our heart, feel the presence of God. We all do that in different ways. It's for a lot of people, and I'm with David, it's you experience God in the breaking of the bread weekly because we're doing what Jesus commanded us to, and it feels really holy. For other people, it's singing choruses. For other people, it's in their prayers in the countryside, in a quiet space, or whatever. But it's all those ways of trying to make Jesus feel authentic and experience a holy God.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you encounter Jesus in other people. I when I did my placement, I did a placement at Helen House, the hospice, the first children's hospice in Oxford, and Sister Frances told this story about because I think her philosophy of this house was companis, about breaking bread together. And that wasn't about people all being of faith, but that when people shared, not just a meal, but shared their experience, they saw something of each other's humanity, but they also saw the face of Jesus in one another. You know, when people were talking about difficult things they've gone through, she said she saw the grace of God in them. And I think that's true as well, that we can see, you know, sometimes it doesn't have to be anything sort of dramatic, but some people, you know, who carry on, you know, caring for somebody or doing something with dedication and faith, you see something of God's grace in them. And I think, you know, sometimes that's how you do encounter God in other people. And I think sometimes it's the very humblest and the things that aren't the most spectacular where you really see that. It's not the big sort of dramatic stuff often, for me anyway.
Yeah, I think for these disciples on the road to Emmaus on that day, their whole life had been almost shattered, or their dreams, their hopes had been shattered and ended, hadn't they? You know, like so many people, they were hoping that Jesus was the Messiah. They failed to recognise that he was, I think, in many ways. But the fact that he now wasn't here anymore, it had ended. What hope was there for them? Yet again, a false dawn has almost arisen. And they're there. And I can almost imagine if I'd have been, you know, one of that group, you're walking along, you've questioned everything time and time and time again. You've tried to work it all out. And still, all you come back to is our hopes have ended in some way. And then you've got this stupid idiot coming alongside them who seemingly knows absolutely nothing about all the events that have gone on the last couple of days. And it's not until this moment of sharing food together that they recognise actually who he is. And it's back to what Chris said earlier, isn't it? You know, we don't always recognise, and that's the beauty about your story. And I remember going to Helen House as well when I was at Gudston, and they are remarkably wonderful people there, aren't they? They really are. And they do have this whole thing about seeing Jesus in action, being part of all that goes on. But on that day, those men couldn't see past their almost, you know, disaster for them.
Yeah, but I guess it's also about ways of seeing, because especially Western people, I know they weren't Western people, but we are, and we rely on our brain, and it's a sort of we're often in our heads, and sometimes you recognize and understand things in a different way. You might not be able to rationalize it. It might not be logical, or you can't work out, you know, how it could be. But that's why that phrase, our hearts burned within us, says something about understanding and knowing in a different way. It's much more holistic. It's much more about your experience and I guess the heart, and not in a slushy way, because the heart, in, you know, the biblical understanding of the heart is about knowledge as well as it's not just about feeling, but it's a deep knowledge. It's knowledge that, you know, that is beyond, you know, what you actually see, because what you see is only part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And on that day, their heart wasn't in the right place.
Yeah.
And it is such a good story because it follows on, of course, from the previous stories we've been looking at. And I guess if you were a follower of Jesus in those days, your heart told you one thing, but your mind or your intelligence led you to believe something else, which is what you started talking about there, wasn't it? You know, this psychological moment in time.
So what's the lesson for us then? Because it's almost sounding like if we're not expecting to see Jesus, if we're not expecting to experience God, it's going to make it even harder for us to do so.
Yeah, and it's about recognition. I guess sometimes, I don't know if you do this, but, you know, when you're going through the year, you know, in the parish, and you just sometimes I often think, oh gosh, what have we managed to do? What are we doing? Are we achieving anything? And I know that APCMs are not any of our favourite things, but sometimes when you look back over the year, you do actually see things that have happened, or experiences, or just gatherings where, you know, we've really worshipped, or whatever it is. And it's, I guess, this whole passage, it's about a journey, and we're always talking about being on a journey, and life is a journey. And I think, you know, that's a big part of this. It would have been a very different dynamic if they'd just been sitting in a room having that conversation, but they're actually moving. And then they had to come all the way back, like you said, Chris, because, you know, they wanted to get back to Jerusalem. But I think sometimes you don't see it there and then, but you have to look back and forward sometimes, as well as being in the present, because you don't always see what you've had, or what you've, you know, what others give you and what you've received together.
Yeah, I think, Chris, not answering your question, but trying to put some more into the conversation, as Deb has done, is that it could be even easier for us to understand 2,000 years on than it was for them there and then, because they really did believe it was the end and there was no hope. And the very essence about everything that we stand for as Christians, I don't mean we as clergy, but we as Christians stand for, is that the great thing is that it all depends on hope and trust in something that we have no ultimate belief about. Yeah. And it is that great hope that all that we've learned, and in our case, we've been privileged to spend time studying, haven't we, to a certain level and ability, that, you know, all that we've learned and heard and shared and gained from other people is all about that hope that the stories that we've heard is true and was true, and we're not in that position of those disciples that day, whose whole belief was that their world had come crashing down around them. Mm-hmm. And we just look forward with hope and gratitude, and through the grace of God, with the ability to say, this is why we believe and why it's important we keep the faith alive today. And it is in that breaking of the bread each Sunday, Monday, whatever day we celebrate the great meal. It is in that breaking of the bread that Jesus becomes alive and we become aware of him again. Mm. There we are.
That sounds like a wonderful note to finish.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your great input. Great input. Chris, I was looking, because for some of the you've got yourself in a far better position in front of the camera today. You're full on in my screen anyway.
That's because I'm scared of Harry.
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah, but I was saying, I've suddenly realised that the more we go on like this, I sometimes wonder whether it's Tom Wright with us on the screen. You're looking very much like Tom Wright these days, Chris.
Yeah,
you don't elevate me to those levels.
You do look very authoritative. He knows what he's talking about. Chris.
He does, doesn't he, Deb?
And he's clear as well. Your picture's much clearer than ours. I think you're a shining example to us, Chris.
Oh, there we are. With that, and without any further ado, thank you all very much indeed for watching. As ever, in the absence of Reverend Neary, you can find us all on, if you found us already, you know where to find us, but all across Egerton.
We're on Beaminster, Bridport and Egerton and Colmers, so it's 3 different benefices.
Yeah, but just think how wide we stretch across this part of the land, and all is good, and we're very grateful for you continuing to watch us. Do let us know what you think about today. A lot of you do, and we're very grateful for that. And we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Next week. There'll be 4 of us next week, I think.
There will be. There will be. All is good in the world of West Dorset, and the sun is shining, and I'm going out to my drains. So. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay humble.
Bye-bye then.